You've been following this case. What do you make of the Michael Flynn situation and where it's going?
I've always felt it to be bizarre. I don't know General Flynn very well. In fact, he may have interacted with us a couple times when he was still in government before being in the White House. But I've always found it to be a bizarre prosecution. This is a career intelligence person who clearly would have known that there was, if he had talked to a foreign official, that was probably being monitored and so forth. And I doubt very seriously someone like that would go into an interview deliberately trying to lie or mislead a federal agent. And my sense is they probably approached him as some sort of a friendly, check-the-box defensive interview as opposed to an effort to sort of trap him into something. So it's disturbing revelations to see that now in those memos.
Yeah, I mean, you're troubled by what you're seeing in those memos and the writings in them?
Yeah, I mean, look, Michael Flynn had a career in intelligence, so he would know, for example, that the chances are in any country in the world, if you're talking to a foreign official on an open line and so forth, someone's listening, whether it's the government from the other place or ours. So he would have no incentive to lie to agents about anything he said or did. That's always been my feeling about it. And obviously these memos now are instructive as well as sort of what the purpose of it was. And I think it's important also to ask whether they talked to the White House counsel about it before going in to speak to him. That would be the normal protocol you would follow.
Doesn't sound, from what James Comey said back in the day as his book was coming out, that they did. I want to turn to intelligence and China. The president, and you're on the Intelligence and Foreign Relations Committees, the president today told reporters that he has seen intelligence that gives him a high degree of confidence that coronavirus started in the Wuhan Institute of Virology lab. He couldn't go into detail. The DNI putting out that they do believe that it was not genetically altered or engineered. What do you know, and what's the concern with China?
Well, obviously, I won't reveal or discuss intelligence matters. I'd say two things. Number one, I think it's important that everybody understand there's a difference between modifying it, like deliberately creating it, and an accident at a lab. The point is, the fact that we have to ask these questions and are speculating about it is because we're not dealing with a government in China that's transparent. That they would cover that up if that were the case. Another thing to keep an eye out for is what are scientists saying? And it's important to note, what are they saying about this virus? Because generally, if a pandemic is being spread from animals to people, you're going to have multiple people infected at the outset. It won't just be one person. If, on the other hand, this has the attributes of something that started with a one person, one patient, a patient zero type situation, that is more indicative of sort of an accident or a singular exposure that led to a broader infection. And I do believe that's something epidemiologists and virologists will look at. Again, it would be a lot easier to know the answer to these questions if the Chinese were transparent and were willing to say, come in, let's figure this out together so this never happens again. Obviously, they're not only not going to do that, I think they're going to try to mislead the world as much as possible.
Speaking of the Chinese, they are speaking out and pushing back against the U.S. and all these comments. Take a listen.
Those claims are preposterous. They present an out-and-out political farce. First of all, asking China to make reparations or these kind of claims, they have no legal basis. There is no international law that supports blaming a country for simply being the first to report a disease.
As you know, Senator, the U.S. is now not alone looking for China, and to get to the bottom of this, what do you think could be done to hold China accountable going forward?
Well, I think the notion that we can force them to pay money is a difficult one to enforce, but I have no doubt in my mind that the entire world, irrespective of what they're saying publicly, are going to be reevaluating their relationship with China. The harm this has done to them, and rightfully so, is extraordinary. The Chinese Communist Party, I always want to remind everybody, the Chinese people are by far the biggest victims of the Chinese Communist Party. But in this case, it's infected the world. Look, if China had acted appropriately 3 weeks earlier than they did, this could very well have been contained in China geographically. Instead, not only did they lie about it, not only did they tell doctors who knew about it not to talk about it, including one who lost his life, but they also bullied countries. They pressured countries into leaving flights open, and that allowed it to spread around the world. Luckily, we did not follow that, but other nations did. And the world knows this. The world is aware of it. Now, some countries can't afford to take on China because they have too much riding on it economically. But a number of countries know full well that the Chinese have misled on this from the very beginning and that the world has been harmed by that. And I think there will be consequences diplomatically, economically, and beyond.
Quickly, Senator, you were one of the first to call for the supply chain to be pulled from China, companies doing business in China to pull it back to the U.S. Is that realistic?
Yeah, and it's something we should have been doing from before anyways, because your supply chain, your ability to provide basic needs for your country are critical. And I've always felt, and I've been talking about this now for a year and a half, that if you rely on a potential adversary for important the things that you need for your economy, you've given them tremendous leverage over you. And it extends beyond medical stuff. I mean, I'm talking about rare earth minerals and all sorts of other things. So I do think that we need, at a minimum, to do what we can to incentivize the return of some of those industries to the United States, and if not to the U.S., then to nations who we are allied and partnered with, to ensure that at a time of crisis, that we don't have a Chinese Communist Party threatening or acting on cutting us off of something we need to defend ourselves or to operate economically.
Senator Marco Rubio, we appreciate your time tonight.